Thank you, Katie. Wow. She does her reporting. She is a hell of a reporter. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for that incredible introduction. Katie and I were actually talking earlier about our kids because our kids happen to be the same age. And I had another nickname, aside from the truck driver. I promise not to curse too much tonight. But I did have another nickname for my kids. They called me the grammar police. I was basically their worst nightmare as an editor. I was kind of like Freddy Krueger, chasing after them with a red pen, ready to pounce if we saw a misplaced comma. But there was one thing that when my kids were growing up that they really loved, and that was every night at bedtime, starting from when they were babies, I read to them. From Pat the Bunny up through the Harry Potter books, it was this moment of calm and connection, no matter how crazy our schedules were that day. And the reason I read to my kids is because my parents read to me. Now, my parents had grown up during the Great Depression, and so they were cheap, right? So, I pretty much wore hand-me-downs until my husband rescued me and I got married. And then I found this Chanel outlet, which was awesome. But there was one thing when I was a kid that I could buy as much of as I wanted, and that was books, including Harriet the Spy. And that was because my parents knew the value of reading. They knew how important it was to learn how to express yourself, the value of having a page in a book or a magazine or a newspaper speak to you. And they knew that reading transforms every aspect of your life. And that's why the work that Literacy Partners was so moved me and is so appealing to me. The idea of teaching parents to read is so critically important. Katie mentioned my first book, Strings Attached, which was an ode to a truly remarkable teacher. But last week, I attended a Literacy Partners class, and this was in Queens. It was taught by Sandra Cespedes. And I can tell you there is a book waiting to be written about her. She brought such joy and passion to her work. Her students were all recent immigrants, as Anthony was talking about. They were from Mexico and Ecuador, the Dominican Republic, Argentina, and they responded in kind. So teaching is, of course, it's at the heart of what Literacy Partners does, but I have to say it is also what, at our best, journalists do. Educating ourselves, educating others, is absolutely essential to maintaining and strengthening our democracy, which is something that has never been more important than it is today. It's at the core of the mission of USA Today and the USA Today network. And a key part of our mission, actually, we see it as connecting communities, as helping people to understand one another, to speak to one another, to hear those different points of views. We have 110 publications. They range from the Detroit Free Press and the Arizona Republic and the Des Moines Register, many, many others. We have reporters who are in red states, blue states, big cities, small towns, rural areas. But I have got to tell you that apropos of the class that I went to, at every one of those 110 publications, one of the most important issues that we are covering today is immigration. Immigrants power our economy in communities across the country in ways a lot of us really aren't even aware of. In our own USA Today markets, we've got dairy farmers. Immigrants are the dairy farmers in Wisconsin, horse trainers in Kentucky. They're the doctors in rural Iowa. And we chronicle also every day the challenges that this community is facing. We broke the story a couple of weeks ago about the first dreamer who was deported despite being in this country legally. We've calculated that arrests of undocumented immigrants with no criminal records has increased 156% over last year. We've identified 33 states that are considering laws to crack down on sanctuary cities, and we've chronicled the rise of anti-immigrant sentiment in this country. Female immigrants and minorities, they face especially steep odds. That's something that I do explore in my new book, the upcoming book, which I'm finishing now. It's for William Morrow, and I know that my publisher and agent are in the audience, and my manuscript's almost finished, I promise. Thank you. This is about the gender gap at work. And so we all know the stat that women earn 80 cents for every dollar a man earns. But what few people realize is for Hispanic women, like the women who I met in this class, for Hispanic women, that figure is just 54 cents. That's the lowest of any ethnic group of either gender. And then you add in the language barrier, and those odds become unimaginably steeper. But that's why I was so blown away when I visited Sandy's class. The students who I met, it was almost all women, one very brave dad. They were among the most determined, ambitious, and also optimistic people that you will ever meet. And I talked to them a little bit about the work we do at USA Today, but I really wanted to know what they thought. I wanted to understand how they viewed our country and what direction we're going in. And so I asked. I asked about the border wall in particular. I said, do you think it's going to be built, or do you think it's just a bunch of politicians that are blah, 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 blah? And they laughed, and in unison, the entire class erupts in blah, 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 blah. And I loved it. I loved their humor and their passion, their guts, their grit. And then one of them, she raised her hand and she asked me, she used the lesson of the day. The lesson of the day was, what's the difference between like, enjoy, and love? And she said to me, what do you like about Literacy Partners? And I answered very truthfully, I love it. Not like, not enjoy, but love. And the reason that I love this organization is because I admire her and the other students. Every one of them there has come to this country for a chance at a better life for themselves and their children. They were learning to speak and read English so that they, in turn, can pass that on to their own children and help their children's lives, just as my own parents had done for me. So President Trump talks a lot about making America great again. And I was really reminded of that in the class, because in that class, that's the answer, right? It was right there in that classroom in the basement of the Malcolm X School in Queens. Literacy Partners, its students, and its teachers are what makes America great. So I want to thank you again. Thank you, Literacy Partners. Thank you to Anthony. Thank you to Katie. That was incredibly embarrassing and fun. To my family, my kids, especially my husband, Tom, who is out here in the audience and who is the one who has made it possible for me to accomplish anything I have ever accomplished at work or at home. And thank you especially to the students at Literacy Partners who have reminded me, and I think all of us, of why we do what we do. Thank you so much.